The Lucy Letby trial, a nurse accused of murdering babies, gives evidence for the first time. She said she hadn't done anything to harm any of the children in her care. Also ahead. Strike UK, high hopes of a breakthrough in the NHS dispute, but teachers have swapped their classrooms for the capital to demand higher pay. The coronation camping begins as a new poll shows the majority of younger people don't support having a monarchy at all. And
the one and only Michelle Obama now.
How a writer's walkout in Hollywood could soon stop production of your favourite American shows.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. A nurse accused of murdering babies at a hospital in Chester has started giving evidence at her trial. Lucy Letby is alleged to have murdered 5 boys and 2 girls and attempted to murder another 5 boys and 5 girls 8 years ago at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. Today, she told the jury she was sickened by the allegations, which had harmed her mental health, but that she hadn't harmed or killed any children. When asked why she had written on a post-it note, "I am evil, I did this," she told the jury, "because I felt at the time I had done something wrong." Sangeeta Lal is at Manchester Crown Court for the trial. Sangeeta, take us through the start of her evidence.
Well, this was the first time we've heard Lucy Letby speak since her trial began 7 months ago now, which gives a sense of the sheer scale of this case, in which she's accused of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 10 others. Now, the prosecution claim she did this by injecting air into their bloodstreams or by overfeeding them. All of this she denies, and today it was the first chance for her to explain why she denies this. And she spoke in a very calm and reserved manner, although at times she did become quite emotional, particularly when being asked about what life is like now and what it's like to no longer be working as a neonatal unit nurse. Now, her defence barrister asked her specifically whether she had harmed any babies on that unit, to which she replied, "No, that's completely against what being a nurse is. I only wanted to help and to care for them." She then also got particularly emotional when she recited the impact of being arrested in 2018 had on her. She said it was sickening that she was being accused of such crimes, and she also explained the impact of what that has had on life now. She said, "My job was my life. It was everything. I can't put it into words. It's just my whole world stopped." And she was then asked about a post-it note found following that arrest in 2018, on which she wrote, "I am evil, I did this." When she was asked why she wrote that, she explained, "I was made to feel I had done something wrong. I felt I must be responsible in some way. I didn't understand why it was happening to me. I'd always been competent and I'd always tried my best." Now, she looked forward at the jury when she was explaining everything over the past few years, and her parents, who've been here almost every day, looked on too. Now, what was clear is that Miss Letby was clutching onto an item in her left hand below her desk as she spoke to the jury, and she'll continue giving evidence this afternoon.
Sangeeta Lal, thank you very much. Thank you. Could the NHS dispute over pay and patient safety concerns soon be over? Yes and no. There are hopes today that talks taking place right now between some unions and health bosses in England could lead to a pay rise for all NHS workers except for doctors. But not all unions are in agreement, which means the health service could still see more strikes, even if those talks go well this lunchtime. Here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
His cancer surgery was cancelled 5 times, in part because of NHS strikes. Now Andy Macklin has had his follow-up appointment postponed too.
You cry because it's so emotional. You build up to the point where you can have your op, bang, you're knocked down again. I still don't know when I'm completely clear. So I've got to wait again.
But he still supports the nurses.
I want them to have their pay rise and for the NHS to be great again.
What are you going to do about the RCN, sir?
Nurses are among those saying the Health Secretary's pay deal doesn't go far enough. But one Cabinet colleague today urged them to accept it.
We think there's a good offer that is now available. And I think that the decisions that individuals and their unions should take should be based on that pay offer. We value health professionals incredibly highly, of course we do. But what we also need to do is focus very much on patients.
Health workers in England have been offered a 5% pay rise for this year and a one-off payment for last year. Most unions, including Unison and the GMB, have accepted the offer, but members belonging to the Royal College of Nursing and Unite rejected it, so further strikes can't be ruled out.
There is the possibility that the government imposes its proposals, but that's not going to stop us going forward. That's not going to stop us escalating the action.
Unite members out on strike today, though, are likely to get the pay rise agreed by other unions if a settlement is imposed by ministers. Health bosses are still worried that the junior doctors' dispute is far from resolved.
It doesn't matter what group of staff, be it the nurses or the junior doctors, each one is just so difficult to plan for, and the staff are absolutely shattered.
We'll never be defeated.
The RCN also hasn't ruled out further industrial action, with a fresh ballot planned for strikes lasting until Christmas. It's unclear what support there'd be for that if a deal is done today. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Many teachers are on strike again today. Some marched to London and held a minute's silence against what they say is the government's toxic and damaging effect on schools, school staff and education. The government has offered a 4.5% pay rise and a one-off £1,000 bonus, but that has been rejected. Sam Holder has the latest on the protests which saw teachers head to Westminster. No sign of any movement in this particular dispute at the moment.
Well, Nina, it doesn't seem like it at all. This is now the 6th strike held by the National Education Union, and we've seen thousands and thousands of teachers march towards Downing Street in a moment that seemed to almost sum up the state of the public sector in 2023. They actually passed striking NHS workers with Parliament in the background. You said this pay offer, 4.5%, was rejected by teachers. I asked some of those on strike today, why?
It was ridiculous. It was laughable. Compared to what Scotland and Wales have, it's ridiculous.
We've given our careers and our lives to committed to the future. Education is the most important thing this country can do, is investing in the future, both financially and with our careers. The problem is the current government is not investing in the future. They've offered pay rises that actually we have to pay out of existing budgets.
With picket lines up and down the country outside schools, schools have taken steps to try to ensure that GCSE and A-level students aren't affected by today's action, given that exams are so close. But Nina, you asked about an end to this dispute. This is just one of 4 unions representing teachers. They're currently all having conversations about coordinating strikes later in the year.
Sam Holder, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, managing inflation is one of the reasons why the government says it isn't agreeing to much higher wage rises for public sector workers. So is the tactic working? Well, food inflation is still very much on the rise. According to new figures from the British Retail Consortium, our food, especially our fresh food, is still costing us more, nearly 16% more than a year ago. Our consumer editor Chris Choi is here. Take us through the figures then.
Well, yeah, of course, this is one set of figures that helps us track just how grim things are in the shops. And remember the overall environment here, where we've seen some rises at their biggest for 45 years. So let's have a look at today's new data. And this is from the retail trade. Food inflation overall up 15.7% in April, over a year. But as you mentioned, within fresh food, things are even worse, rising even faster, now up 17.8% in the last year. Ambient food, a little bit less. We're talking about things like canned foods, biscuits, cereals. They're rising at 12.9%. And if you're looking for slightly better news, look away from the food shelves at non-food, rising at 5.5%, which is slightly less than it has been rising. And the retailers say that is largely because there's been what they call heavy discounting of clothing, footwear and furniture. But now, from those figures, the big issue is why aren't shops passing on reductions that we're seeing in the wholesale markets? Now, the British Retail Consortium, who's put out the figures today, say we will, in coming months, see more discounts coming through as wholesale prices begin to fall. Earlier, we spoke to the British Retail Consortium.
Many retailers will have contractual agreements with their suppliers, so these aren't necessarily done at a point in time. So these agreements tend to be over a period of 6 to 12 months, but possibly longer. So you don't immediately see those prices filter through.
So basically they're saying that they've got deals with the suppliers that they're contracted to, which will stop those reductions coming through as quickly as everybody would like. But just remember the overall context. This spring we have seen a welter of price rises for almost every household. We've been looking at broadband, council tax, energy, all going up. Now there'll be tremendous pressure on the stores to bring those prices down in line with wholesale.
Chris, thank you very much. Thank you. A 24-year-old man is still being questioned this lunchtime over the suspected murder of Michael Allen in Cornwall. Grace Pascoe is at the crime scene. Grace, what's the latest on this investigation?
Well, as you can see, the police cordon remains in place here outside the Eclipse nightclub in Bodmin, where one man died and 7 others were injured in the early hours of Sunday morning. Devon and Cornwall Police, as you say, have been granted an extension to continue questioning a 24-year-old Bodmin resident who was detained on suspicion of murder, attempted murder and causing grievous bodily harm. Over at Bodmin Rugby Club, a memorial's been set up for people to lay flowers and pay their respects to 32-year-old Michael Allen from Liskeard, who was pronounced dead at the scene in Bodmin after a suspected knife attack. Friends I spoke to said they were devastated and described Mike as a larger-than-life character who would be dearly missed by all those who knew him. 7 other men and women were injured during the incident, all of them taken to hospital. 5 have since been released, 2 are still in hospital recovering from surgery. And Devon and Cornwall Police want anyone with information to contact them immediately.
Grace Pascoe, thank you. The deadline for the final evacuation flight for British citizens in Sudan has now passed. The Foreign Office told those looking to leave the war-torn country they had till noon local time, 11 a.m. in the UK, to reach the evacuation point. More than 2,000 British nationals have been rescued from the civil war so far. And 6 Cadbury desserts, including flake and dairy milk buttons, are being recalled over listeria concerns. Muller warned those who purchase certain batches should return them for a refund. The listeria bacteria can cause listeriosis, an illness similar to flu. Now, it may be another 4 days until the King's coronation, but some of the most enthusiastic and hardy royalists have already grabbed their place on the Mall to get a first glimpse of the processions on Saturday. The King's sister, Princess Anne, says the King won't be changed by his new role and told CBC News in Canada that she didn't think a slimmed-down monarchy was a good idea. Layla Hayes has the latest on the build-up to the big day.
Just days to go until King Charles is officially crowned, and these dedicated royal fans have already saved their spot on the Mall.
The reason why we came here, because we like the build-up, and there's nothing bigger than the coronation, and that's why I'm here.
I want to witness what's going on, coronation. I'm very excited about it.
Looking forward to seeing all the pomp and circumstance that we do so well in this country.
1937 was the last time we saw a king's coronation. George VI also crowned next to his consort. Charles will be reusing the belt and glove worn by his grandfather. And in a rare interview, his sister, Princess Anne, said she believes the monarchy is in safe hands.
Well, you know what you're getting, because he's been practising for a bit. And I don't think he'll change. You know, he is committed to his own level of service. That will remain true.
She also insisted the monarchy was still relevant.
But I would just underline that the monarchy provides, with the Constitution, a degree of long-term stability that is actually quite hard to come by any other way.
More than 2,000 people have been invited, and not just VIPs. Many of those who've supported the King's charities will also be there.
I think I was chuffed and quite happy about it. I guess because I was a member of the foundation for quite a while, like we'd already met him, and it didn't seem abnormal actually to have been invited to it, which I think is quite nice. And it's actually only when I've told a few people and they've been really shocked that I've realised that what a big deal it is.
Charles and Camilla will attend a celebratory coronation reception later today. He's waited 74 years for this, and soon Charles will finally be crowned king. Layla Hayes, ITV News.
So we've heard Princess Anne's views on the future of the monarchy, but what are yours? Well, it seems the country is divided on the issue, and it all comes down to what age you are. That is according to a new poll commissioned by ITV News. 70% of over 65 support having a monarchy, but that figure falls dramatically in the 18 to 34 age group, where only 39% support the institution. Overall, 51% of people questioned think Charles III will be a good king, but only 42% think Camilla will make a good queen. Our correspondent Romilly Weeks is at Buckingham Palace for us this lunchtime. Romilly, take us through the findings.
Well, Nina, as you were saying there, it's perhaps not surprising there is this big generational split in support for the king, with an older generation much more supportive. But it's amongst the under 35s that Charles really has his work cut out. That generation much more likely to know the royal family through the troubles with Harry and Meghan, or even through television portrayals like The Crown. And I don't think it will be much consolation to the king either that he is more popular than his wife, although given how universally vilified she was before their marriage, I think it is quite a turnaround that Camilla is being crowned alongside him on Saturday and has the level of support that she does have.
And Romilly, what has King Charles been doing to prepare today?
Well, the King and Queen Consort are right now meeting MPs and peers in Westminster Hall. Many of those MPs have not actually been invited to the coronation on Saturday. That's in line with the palace's wishes to make it much more accessible to ordinary members of the public, or members of the public who've done extraordinary things for their community. And that's like the stands that are going up in front of Buckingham Palace beside me here. Those are for NHS workers and veterans. They will get a prime view of the procession. And for an older generation, those who are convinced of the importance of the monarchy in our national life, I'm sure it will be quite a sight. Whether it will be enough to convince the under 35s battling with a cost of living crisis, perhaps not.
Romilly Weeks at Buckingham Palace, thank you. Earlier in the programme, we brought you the latest on Strike UK, but a walkout which began in America today could also impact us here. Writers in Hollywood have put down their pens to stage their first strike in 15 years. TV and film writers are calling for fair pay in the streaming era. If the dispute is not resolved, it could take some favourites off air for months. Sharon Thomas has the details.
The one and only Michelle Obama now.
The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon is one of America's most popular talk shows. More than 1 million viewers a night tune in to watch its star host chat to former First Ladies, movie stars and musicians. But the lights could go out on it and hundreds of other shows tonight as nearly 12,000 screenwriters take to the picket line for the first time in 15 years in a dispute over pay.
I hope there is no strike. I support my writers, but we have a lot of staff and crew that will be affected by this, but they got to get a fair deal.
Well, that's not your decision to make.
Negotiations between the studios and writers, which started in March, have so far failed to reach an agreement, so all script writing has now stopped. It could affect film productions as well as TV, including soap operas like General Hospital, as they're usually written and filmed in quick succession.
The impact could be really quite big if it goes on for quite a long time, because of course streamers and big shows need writing essentially for them to go and get made. So and you only have to look back at the previous writers' strike 15 years ago to know that big shows such as Lost, such as 24, had their seasons cut short.
The last Writers Guild of America strike in 2007-8 lasted 100 days. It saw popular shows taken off air.
We have to go back!
And is estimated to have cost the economy in California more than £1.5 billion as productions shut down.
Whenever I stay at a White Lotus, I always have a memorable time, always.
We may not see an impact on some shows, such as comedies and dramas like The White Lotus, until later in the year, as they're already written and filmed.
It wasn't supposed to be a boys' trip.
Whatever the outcome, TV and movie fans will all be hoping for a happy Hollywood ending to this story. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
And finally, staying stateside for the biggest night in the fashion world as celebrities converged on New York City for this year's Met Gala. The dress code was in honour of Karl Lagerfeld, who was creative director of Chanel from 1983 until his death in 2019. Cat-themed outfits featured heavily at this year's event in honour of his beloved pet Choupette. Actor Jared Leto wore arguably the most eye-catching tribute to the blue-eyed cat. And tennis legend Serena Williams was also in attendance, confirming she is pregnant for the second time. Lucrezia is here at 6:30 from everyone here for now. Bye-bye.